My guest today is an American anthropharmacologist, a research pharmacognosist, lecturer, and author. He's the brother of the well-known and very influential psychedelic proponent Terrance McKenna, and is a founding board member and the director of the anthropharmacology at the Hefter Research Institute. It is my pleasure and honor to bring to you today Dennis McKenna. Okay, Dennis, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you putting the time to be here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So generally, the way I do these is I don't like a script. I don't like going off too many notes. And what I just think tends to work better is we just speak and just see where the conversation goes. I always find a lot of insight comes out that way, as opposed to when you're going off a script and you have to stick to it. So
no, I totally agree. A free wheeling conversation is the way to go.
Absolutely.
It's the end of the day, although where you are, you're in the UK, right? You must be a night owl.
I am. It's 11 p.m. now. I usually sleep maybe around 1.
5 o'clock here.
It's still early.
It's the low point of the day. So, but we'll forge ahead. You know.
I know you've had a lot. You've been very busy. From what I remember, you were back in the Amazon. Was it 2 or 3 years ago? Am I right?
No, I haven't been in the Amazon for actually since 2012. I have not been to the Amazon since 2012. I have been going to Peru pretty regularly, but I've been going to the Sacred Valley most of the time, up in the Andes, which is much nicer area in some ways, and I've been organizing ayahuasca retreats there since about 2012. So that's great. It gives me a chance to get down there about twice a year. And have you ever been to Peru?
I've been once, yes.
Okay. To Iquitos or?
Iquitos, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Iquitos is so much the Wild West these days. It's just out of control there. you know,
is, yeah.
I mean, it's always been a chaotic environment anyway. But the Sacred Valley is a little less crazy at this point.
And
so how long that will last, I don't know. But that's what I've been doing lately.
Okay. And from what I understand, you're going to be at the Breaking Convention this year, right? In London?
I can't confirm that. There rumors are that I am, but I'm kind of the last to be told. I'm actually on the fence about it because it makes my travel schedule very awkward. Okay, I am coming to the UK in late May. There are 2 conferences at this place called Tyringham, one of which I am promoting and organizing and kind of being the key person bringing it together. The other one, I'm just an attendee, but then that's over on the 10th of June, and I don't know. Am I going to hang out for 3 weeks? This may not be easy. I'll have to find something to do, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be at Breaking Convention. I would love to come. I've been invited, and I keep putting them off, and I feel bad about that. Plus, I know it's going to be a great convention, but we'll see what happens.
The thing is, I'm sorry to cut you off. The last Breaking convention that they had here, was actually part of the film crew helping to film it. It was very interesting. Very interesting. We had Dr. Strassman there as well. He was on Skype actually. He didn't come, but if you can't come, maybe you can do it via Skype.
Maybe I can do it by Skype, but it would be good. David Nichols is going to be there. He's a good colleague of mine. Edie Frixka is going to be there. Frixka, and it's going to be an interesting event. And I just don't know if I'll be there. I'm juggling some options here. I may be able to go to Iceland for 10 days and actually come back to the UK for the conference. So we'll see.
Okay.
And then I'm organizing a couple of conferences. This one at Tyringham in early June, which is going to be called, I don't know if you want to get into the details about this now, because we're just in the planning stage, but I can describe it to you if you want.
Oh, yeah, maybe just a quick description. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be called the Ethnopharmacologic Search for Psychoactive Drugs 50, or ESPD 50 for short. That'll be the Twitter hashtag. And what this conference is, there was a historic conference in 1967 that was held in San Francisco, California, called the Ethnopharmacologic Search for Psychoactive Drugs. It was put on by the U.S. government, the National Institutes of Mental Health, and it was the symposium proceedings were issued from the U.S. government printing office, right? Now, what is the U.S. government doing sponsoring a conference like this? I mean, well, it was 1967, right? And these things were not completely stigmatized. The idea at the time was that there were supposed to be follow-up conferences about every 10 years. Well, they had this conference, and then the war on drugs came along, the political wind shifted, and there was never a follow-up conference. And so 2017 is the 50th anniversary of that first conference. So we're going to do it again along the same model and issue a symposium proceedings, much like the first one. The first one was a closed conference. Ours is not going to be closed, but there is a limited number of attendees, but we're going to do a worldwide webcast. And we also will have a symposium volume that will come out of it, which we're going to publish together with the original one. So we're going to have a box set of the two volumes, and we're going to do pre-sales of that to cover the cost of the conference. This is the plan, anyway.
I've got to say, it sounds very exciting.
Should be very interesting, yeah.
I mean, we've come such a long way since, you said, is it 50 years since the last conference?
Yeah,
50.
Well, exactly. Everything's changed, and yet now psychedelics are being rediscovered, and sort of the cloud that they've been under for almost that long, They were really effectively banned in 1970s. It took 20 years for the door to even begin to be reopened. But now there has been accumulation of enough good science and good data that the door has literally been blasted off its hinges. And psychedelic research is in a renaissance. So this is a good time to bring this conference around. And essentially, there's been a lot of work in the last 50 years, none of which was talked about at the conference because it wasn't done. So that's what we want to do. I want to circle back on it and focus on some of the more obscure areas, of what you might call ethnopsychopharmacology, some of the plants that have been poorly investigated. The world doesn't need another ayahuasca conference, as wonderful as that is, but there's plenty of those kinds of things. So this will be a kind of a quirky, unusual conference, and it's going to result in this symposium volume. But what is different now than 50 years ago is we have newer technologies. So even though it's a limited space, limited number of people attending, but we're going to do a worldwide webcast in real time using Facebook capabilities. So potentially thousands of people, if they're interested, will see this conference. And that's the way things are. That's what we have planned.
Amazing. Sounds very interesting. And I was going to say, in this day and age, people, as sad as it is, they prefer to stay at home and watch these things on their computer as opposed to getting up and going there and, you know,
right.
spending. So you probably will be very successful in that department.
Yeah. Well, for a lot of people, I mean, it's in the UK, right? So that for the US viewers, the US people, that's a challenge unless they're really into it. And you know, this venue that we're doing it at, Tyringham Hall, is a fantastic venue. It's like an 18th century country house. It's right out of Downton Abbey, actually. But you know, there's a limited number of spots, and it won't be cheap. It'll be, you know, to be actually attend the conference, it'll be fairly pricey. But the webcast will be free, and the volumes, which won't come out for some months after the conference, you know, but the volumes are going to be reasonably priced. So people will get, there'll be something for everyone in this conference. And it will be recorded, of course, and documented and so on. So
Okay.
I'm kind of excited about it.
Yeah, I'm getting excited listening as well. I was going to say, once you get more information, maybe you can send it to me, and I'll put in the description for anyone that listens in the future. If I can come, I'll definitely attend. I'm not too far from where you're holding it, actually.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
No.
Good.
So maybe we'll see each other there. But what I was gonna say, you mentioned earlier, just a second ago, about ayahuasca and these ayahuasca conferences. Back in the day, most of the earlier trips that you and your brother Terrance made to the Amazon, I think, were almost a catalyst for what we're seeing today with ayahuasca almost spreading worldwide. I visit Iran once a year, which is in the Middle East, and people in Iran is a country where alcohol is banned. I mean, if you want it, you know, you can get it, but it's a very strict country. So recently people over there are experimenting with ayahuasca and DMT. They're setting up a retreat. And for me to think that it's spread to a country like Iran in the heart of the Middle East is just insane, because I would never imagine that it would get that far this quick. And it's amazing.
Yeah, if it's penetrated to Iran, it's penetrated pretty much everywhere. That's amazing. You're Iranian?
Originally, yeah. I moved to the UK.
Wow. I mean, what must it be like to be involved in an ayahuasca cult in Iran? My God.
The thing is, I'm looking into this, and apparently in Islam there is something written about DMT and the fact that it can be used in religious ceremonies. So I think there's something that there's some sort of loophole, maybe, or
yeah.
It's very interesting. It's just the fact that it's got there.
I recently met, or last year, I was in Prague for a conference which was called Beyond Psychedelics. It was a great conference. There's a young fellow there, an Afghani man, who's running an Iboga clinic in Afghanistan.
Wow.
It's like, I'm just amazed that this is going on. I mean, this is really evidence that the plants are winning in a certain way. The plants are infiltrating, you know, these most authoritarian and difficult societies, and of course ours as well. And quite frankly, you know, I look at the global geopolitical scene and I just despair, you know, that politics has any solution at all. It obviously doesn't. It's the, you know, I mean, the complete sort of collapse of America, you know, with the new administration. It's not a very pretty picture here right now. There are a lot of people that are very concerned. But and they say, well, what are you doing about it? What I'm doing about it is what I've always been doing, which is trying to tell people about plant medicines. And, I think that is maybe the only thing, or one of the few things that may save us, because they're catalysts for consciousness. They get people to wake up. And that is what we need, is to wake up to what's happening. And that's always why psychedelics have been suppressed, because they give people unconventional ideas, funny ideas, my brother used to call them. And funny ideas are not convenient for the person that be, because they make people ask questions, and that's not convenient. So these things, ayahuasca and mushrooms and these other psychedelic plant teachers, if you will, are catalysts for conscious evolution, and thus diametrically opposed to the current geopolitical hegemony, which seems to be dumb people down, keep people in the dark, and just distract them with all this mindless entertainment. Meantime, these people are seizing the reins of power, or so they think. That's actually a delusion in a certain way, because if I've learned anything from ayahuasca in many years of taking it, it's that, it always says, you monkeys only think you're running the show, and we're not running the show. And thank God, look what a mess we've made of it. The plants are running the show. For that, we should be grateful, because they're keeping life on Earth, going. But it's a pretty dismaying scene, a situation right now. I don't know whether to. Well, I am inherently a fairly optimistic guy, but it's depressing even me.
I know exactly what. The world is a mess, and that's one of the reasons why I opened my channel, because there was a point where I just realized everything we've been told is either wrong, or it's a lie, or there's things being kept from us. While everything in the world is going to shit, we're here living in a delusion, basically thinking we know, but we don't, because it's being kept from us. And I just want to know why. I mean, and I think plants, like you said, hold the answer, and it's the key. And that's why it's been hidden from us for the past 50, 60, 70 years.
Yeah, I've wondered why it is happening now, but I think that it's happening because, on some level, I think the entire, community of species, you can call it Gaia if you want, but the community of species is trying to get a message to, its most problematic species, which is us. And it's very, many people are getting this message. It's very dismaying to me, though, when the governments of the world, especially our government, which should be taking the lead, it's not even on the agenda. I mean, they say, no, we don't believe in climate change. We don't believe in science, is what they're saying. We don't believe in what's right in front of us. So willful denial, and we're not going to get any. We're not going to get any solutions as long as that's the position they take. And now we have potentially 8 years, where absolutely nothing will be done about this, at least in the States. And in fact, what has been achieved and will be rolled back. Is being rolled back even as we speak. If there's a glimmer of hope in any of this, I think that it's very unlikely that the Trump administration will last even 4 years, let alone 8 years. I mean, they seem to be very good at creating problems for themselves, and I think the whole thing is going to probably collapse in as it already seems to be, in a storm of recrimination, accusations, incompetence, litigation, madness of all sorts, and they won't be able to implement very much of the agenda, and the rest of us can be thankful for that. because their agenda is a dark agenda indeed. This may be the first time in history. I mean, maybe in ancient history, I don't know, but the first time in modern history, certainly, where the leader of the free world is very likely certifiably insane. How did we get to this point? I mean, it goes way beyond that. You don't agree with their politics or whatever, conservative versus liberal. It's the country is being led by somebody who is has a very loose grip on reality, and unfortunately has managed to put people around him who not only share those delusions but encourage those delusions. So it's a pretty bad situation.
I think Graham Hancock says, he said perfectly, he said, everyone who wants to get into politics should drink ayahuasca and then decide if they still want to be.
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree. But that's not going to happen because they know as well as we do that it might shift their consciousness. And if it doesn't, then that's a further sign of pathology. The curadero that I have been working with for the last 4 years, he's a wonderful man, and he is very traditional in his practice, but he's a modern person. He's about 50, and he reads books, and he's very integrated into society. And he was telling me, I don't know how the conversation came up, but I said, what kind of people do you not let in your circle? What kind of people will you not, treat or allow? He said, basically 2 kinds. He said, schizophrenics, I can't help them. And sociopaths, it doesn't work. I can't help them. And unfortunately, sociopathy, being a sociopath, is, practically a job, a qualification for the job of politician. Yeah. They're all sociopaths, and so that is dismaying. But he's absolutely right. Ayahuasca is not going to. It won't touch you if you're a sociopath because you have so many mechanisms to make sure that nothing does. I mean, the operating mindset of people like Trump and his people are, our minds are made up. Don't confuse us with facts. We don't have time for that. We make up our own facts. We don't need your facts. And that is very dangerous. And so, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see all of this is more distraction to take our minds away from what really matters, and that's to go within and figure out who we are. I mean, really, at the end of it, none of this matters. What Trump said the other day to Hillary and what they ate for dinner. I mean, at the end of the day, who does it affect? In the bigger picture, I can understand where it's going, but you've got to also understand that at the same time, there could be a lot of distraction to keep us busy fighting amongst each other, as opposed to looking out to see who is causing the problems. Because it's not us. We are just here experiencing whatever this is and trying to find answers. Like, I mean, I've got to a point now where I just really don't care about politics. I'm just trying to concentrate on what matters to me. And that at the moment is trying to figure out who I am, where I am, and why I'm here. And I think, I mean, DMT has literally changed my life. I mean, I'd like to share my story with you and maybe get your 2 cents of what you think took place. A few years back, after I finished university, I'd started smoking cigarettes, and I was smoking maybe 20, 30 cigarettes a day. Sometimes to the point where I didn't even need it, but I was just doing it because of just out of habit. I tried everything to quit. Nothing worked. One day, for the first time, I smoked DMT. I went somewhere, I came back within 5 minutes, and I never touched another cigarette or drank alcohol again for, it's been nearly 3 years.
Amazing.
The instant I came out of the experience, I had phlegm in my throat for about 2 days, and just even the thought of smoking a cigarette just made me physically sick, like I would gag. And even today, I can't even think about smoking. So I don't know what happened there or why. All I know is that it completely changed my life. So why is this not, news? Why is Trump's
it is news. You are aware of the study at Johns Hopkins on using psilocybin?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So that's very similar, and that gave spectacular results. Nothing else even came close. So they're doing a bigger study, and eventually they may get psilocybin approved for that, because it's certainly more effective than anything else. But science, especially in this area, especially in the area where you're trying to work within the context of big science and a regulatory framework and all that, it moves very slowly. It's amazing that we can get this work done with these controlled substances, Schedule 1 substances, that were formally designated they're Schedule 1 because they're, by definition, they have no medical uses, they're bad, they're well, the data is accumulating to show that they're anything but that. I mean, psilocybin is one of the safer psychedelics that you can use, and it has really multiple applications. MAPS is working with MDMA, the MAPS organization over here, and they just got approval for a phase 3 study using for PTSD. But MAPS is kind of focused only on MDMA and that one application. Hefter, not by plan, but the Hefter Research Institute, I should mention, hopefully people know about it. We kind of have settled on psilocybin, not that we plan to restrict our work only to that substance, but kind of the way it's come out in the wash, if you will. We've centered our work on psilocybin, and we're working on it for a number of different therapeutic areas, including smoking cessation. But that's just one. Probably the initial application and where it might actually find its way into clinical work would be in a hospice situation, give it to people who are dying to help them come to terms with that, with their mortality, and it shows great promise for that. So, one or both of these compounds is probably going to be approved for this use, but who knows when? I mean, the government is not supporting this work, even though they should be, but they're not, because then they'd have to admit that these things have medical uses and that are worth exploring. But not only are they not supporting it, they are not even open to it. After the initial psilocybin study was done with smoking, they had these results. The investigator of that on that project went to NIDA and actually applied for a grant from NIDA to pursue this research, and got a very high score on the grant. It was reviewed, and it was said this very well designed grant. It's obviously a big problem from the scientific standpoint. It's a very solid protocol. But then the head of NIDA, the director of NIDA, had to intervene and basically said, forget it. NIDA is not going to fund psilocybin research. Not now, not ever. You're just wasting your time. and effectively that, we don't care if it resurrects the dead. We're not going to do this kind of research, So with an attitude like that, it's hard to push it forward. I mean, and that's the head of National Institute on Drug Abuse. So there are a lot of in sort of entrenched positions in this field, but just keep pushing, keep the pressure on, and that will change. Likely after some of these people die off. I mean, that's kind of what I think is necessary, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to that stage where we just have to put up with it maybe for a little longer. But I think again, at the end of the day, personally, we all still need to seek our own truth. I always like to point that out because this isn't another topic I want to touch on maybe today is the relationship between consciousness. You did a talk, I think it was in 2013, about the neuroscience of the brain, or of
neuroscience and spirituality.
Spirituality, I think it was one of your first presentations you did. It was very, very interesting. I remember watching it a while back. Do we know anything more than we did back then about how consciousness and the brain and DMT and all of these work together, or not?
Well, we're working on it. That's another area where psilocybin is proving to be very useful. As a tool for understanding consciousness and sort of the limits of consciousness, and particularly these states that we call mystical experiences. We can now reliably study a mystical experience using psilocybin. Before, mystical experience was something that people maybe meditated or hoped for all their lives. They could never, and if it happened, great. It was accepted as a blessing. But now with 30 milligrams of psilocybin in the right set and setting, pretty much anyone can have one of these mystical experiences, which is important, I think, because I think a big problem that our culture faces is that people long for meaningful mystical experiences, and our religions are not offering them. Our religions are hollowed out, and they're basically little more than bludgeons to beat people into line, keep people in line, and so there's very little hope of a meaningful, real spiritual experience from organized religion. So we have to return to these plant medicines. So that is important, that we can access these experiences through these medicines. But then the other side of this is we can actually study that, as a scientific, use psilocybin as a way to study it as a scientific endeavor. And we can use the toys, the instruments of neuroimaging and all these other types of things to say, well, what is the brain doing when it's having a mystical experience? What is it doing when it's having a psilocybin-induced mystical experience or a quote-unquote natural mystical experience? What difference is there, if any? We can actually look at this process, and we can say, well, certain parts of the brain are activated, other parts are suppressed. And you can look at that using fMRI and all these other very cool, sexy techniques. But you're still looking at a fundamental gap, I think, which is it's like you're looking, these instruments can open a window onto the brain, and you can actually see through the window, what the brain is doing, and the person may be having this subjective mystical experience or whatever. But the investigator is still standing outside the window looking in. And we have not yet figured out, and I don't even know if it's possible, but we haven't figured out how to bridge that gap between what we can observe what the brain is doing in certain altered states or even normal mental states, and we can observe that from the outside. But we can't, so far, have not been able to bridge that gap between that and subjective experience, which is where we get to experience. We're having subjective experience all the time. That's all we have, really. But we can't, I can't step into your head and you step into mine and have, we can't swap, subjective experiences. We might be able to someday. So I hope you've got a good mind, but we might be able to do it someday. But I think that's a big challenge for neuroscience, is to show how can we relate our own subjective experience to what is actually going on at the neural level, other than just comparing it and say, well, this person is having a mystical experience and this part of their brain is activated. And that's great, but that's not the same. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, try explaining a DMT a trip that you've had to someone. It's impossible. Now you want to take that experience and compare it to some neurons that you're seeing inside a machine firing. It's impossible. I mean, I think we've got a long way to go before we can even begin to understand what these substances do, not on the physical level. Beyond, because there's definitely I that's my personal belief, is that there's got to be more to it than just the brain making these up. I like, there was an analogy you've used before yourself that I quite like, is like the radio, and where you tune it and it picks up a signal, and I think the brain is something very similar to a radio, and we're just picking up different energy.
Oh yeah. I agree. I think that's pretty clear. But that is a question, and you get into some pretty tricky epistemological places in a sense. But yeah, I think that the brain, a lot of what the brain does is it generates essentially a model of reality, a hallucination. That's our reality. We're living in a hallucination that's synthesized by our brain from external data and internal data, memories, associations, and that sort of thing. And it creates a model of the world that we proceed to inhabit, and we say, this is reality. But really, there are great parts of it that the brain is supplying, and it's so in a sense it is a hallucination, and it's a drug-induced hallucination, because our brain, and really our whole body, it runs on drugs. That's what neurotransmitters are drugs. And what the psychedelics show is you can switch channels, you can modulate the signal profoundly by, these different molecular tweaks. But ultimately, I think the brain is creating this reality, and we can modulate it, we can influence it. But
absolutely, totally agree.
It's there is, and this creates problems, because for understanding, because then you realize there really is no inside or outside, or there's, the concept of what is real, and is this really real? Well, by what criteria? Do you say something is real? And you really, you can't.
Yeah, I like the fact that you said that the body runs on drugs, because a lot of what I've found is a lot of people, when you talk to them about DMT and psilocybin, they have two arguments. They either say you're a druggie, or they say, these things are demonic, so they take the religious standpoint. But the people that say, you're using drugs to do this and that, I mean, everything that we use in our everyday life is a drug in a sense, because you're taking something in to change the chemistry inside. Like even when you drink water, for example, or coffee, air, it's the same thing. It's
what I'm fond of saying, we are made of drugs.
Yeah.
You know, that's why they work. There's no getting away from it. I mean, the Partnership for the Drug-Free America must be very disappointed to hear this, because in fact we are made of drugs, so there's no getting away from drugs. Yeah. And you know, just about every, I mean, I don't know any experience that is not reflected on some level by a neurochemical state of your brain, because your brain is the filter that all this is coming through. And you know, much of what the brain is doing is keeping stuff out. You know, it has a filtering mechanism. If every bloody piece of data got through those gates, it would just be a confusing mess. So in some way, the brain is like the I don't know what the analogy would be. It's like the housekeeper. It keeps things tidy, so you don't get bogged down in all this external information that may be of interest, but most of the time isn't. You know, and then the psychedelics can come along and they can lift those gates to some extent, and that can also be valuable. You know, they change your gating, your sensory gating mechanism, which you develop kind of as a force of habit, and they can temporarily disrupt that, and that can be good because it lets you step out of your reference frame, and when you do, that's usually a good thing, because you know, reference frames by definition restrict. They have boundaries, right? And so there's a lot going on that you never see, that you never perceive, and the psychedelics enable you to, in some ways, push the foreground, which is usually where our attention is focused, into the background, bring the background forward, and then there are all these things going on in the background that we're conditioned not to perceive most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're very useful in that way.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time to be alive, because there's so many people out to seek answers, and there's so many ways for us to find these answers. And I think psychedelics, I was always a very anti-drug person. I mean, if you spoke to me about psychedelics, I would just walk out the room. But there came a point where I realized that what we were just talking about, drug is just a word that they've put a label on things that they don't want us to go near. So once I realized, yeah, like I said, it changed my life. So I'm very excited to be part of this, and I want to help spread the message and tell people that there's a lot being kept from us. I mean, most of my viewers know this because they're very open-minded. I actually have some questions from some viewers. If you don't mind, we'll go through a couple of those before we wrap up. But
okay.
My viewers are very open-minded, and you know, they have completely different beliefs. Everyone, you know, ranging from many different things. So I'm quite lucky in that department because I've got a lot of support. So I just want to put the message out there for people, at least look into it and ignore the things you've been told, and just look into it for yourself and see how it can change your life. Would you agree?
Yeah. So we if you haven't already, we should plug some websites like hefter.org, HEFFTER. That's a good place to see what's going on with psilocybin. That's mostly what we're doing. And then maps.org, which everybody knows about. They're doing good work. And then I always like to plug Arrowwood.org. Are you familiar with Arrowwood? Yeah. Best information resource for drugs of all kinds, and they, you know, they do a very good job. So they deserve your viewers' support as well, and just knowing that it's there. You know, if something comes up, a new designer drug or whatever, that if I need to know about it, the first place I go is Arrowwood, because chances are they've covered it. You know, so.
I will put those links in the description as well for everyone to check out after we wrap up. But could you just quickly tell us about, because you wrote a book after your brother passed, Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss. That's still selling quite well. I mean, I've got a copy myself. I haven't read
Apparently,
it.
it's still selling. Yeah, it is still selling amazingly,
Yeah.
and good for me, right? It's selling off Amazon, and I still get to go to conferences, and that's good. It's like it opens the door to those things. And there is a website where you can order the book. If you want a signed book, you can order it from the website called brotherhoodofthescreamingabyss.com. And all that's, I mean, I will sign it and send it to you. Amazon is not gonna give you that, but people can order it. I check my orders. I'm not the quickest order fulfiller, but you will get it sooner or later.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll put those links again in the description. I do highly recommend this. It's a very good book. Another good book that I really love is the one you wrote with your brother, Mushroom Growers Guide. Brilliant book. A must-have for anyone who wants to get into experimenting with psilocybin. Which takes me to my next point, which is a question someone sent in for you. If you don't mind, we read a couple and then maybe we could wrap up. I know you're busy. So this question is from Mike from the States, and he says, what is your psychedelic of choice, and what advice would you have for anyone who wants to experiment with psilocybin on their own?
Okay, well, yeah, my psychedelic of choice these days is probably ayahuasca. It seems to be the one that I find myself taking more often. And the other one would be mushrooms. I don't take it as much as I take ayahuasca now, but I take it a couple of times a year, and I think it's just as profound and you know, as important as ayahuasca. Some people tend to think that you know, because it's easy, relatively easy at low doses, it's recreational and it's not profound. But I'm here to tell you, at higher doses, it gets really, really, I mean, ayahuasca's got nothing over mushrooms. You know, mushrooms can take you to some very challenging places as well, which is sort of the point. And, you know, to speak to the gentleman's second question, that's the thing. All of these things, the critical variables to take any of these psychedelics are, as we keep hammering, you know, setting and set, and of course dose. You know, that's the third variable. But the setting is important. If you're going to use these things, you should plan ahead. You should actually do it in a respectful way, where, especially if you have little or no experience, and this is, you know, you should do it where what you're doing is about the experience, you know, and not part of something else, you know, going to a concert or whatever. That's all good, but if you're going to do it and really learn from it, I urge people to do it in a setting where they can pay attention to what's going on internally. They don't have to worry about outside variables. So the first thing to do is make sure you do it in a place that's safe and where you feel comfortable and peaceful, you know, and then set. Set is the other angle, and set is basically everything you bring to the experience. And so a degree of education ahead of time, or just thinking about it. There are different ways to prepare, and really it's your whole life that you're bringing to it, you know. So, but if you anticipate doing it, make sure you have a good setting to do it, and work on your set. And your set is, you know, not something that you can change, but you can say, you know, well, I want to learn about something specific. I want an intention, and that's okay. But you don't have to have an intention. You can also say, I just want to learn whatever the plant teacher wants to share with me, and that's kind of what I've come to lately. Rather than have an intention, just open yourself up to it, and that's about it. And
I mean,
you know, if you're taking mushrooms by yourself and you have little experience, well, start with a low dose and work up. You know, I mean, this is just common sense. It's also okay to have a sitter if you're, you know, if you haven't had a lot of experience, you can have a sitter, just somebody that is there, not even necessarily in the same room, but close by. It's an added bit of security and comfort. And people that are quite experienced with these things, they, you know, you learn how to use them, right? And then you don't necessarily need a sitter.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes what I found is they almost it's as if they are conscious of what you actually need, so they will give you whatever it is you need, as long as you're in the right mind. 9 out of 10 times you'll come back with something that you not necessarily wanted, but you'll figure it out in time that you needed it. And
yeah, that's quite true. I think you won't necessarily get what you need, what you want, but you will get what you need. Yeah,
I totally agree. Okay, excellent. So next question is from Laura. She doesn't say where she's from, but she says, oh, good. Okay, yeah, she's asking about the pineal gland. It's actually a very good question. I remember after Rick Strassman's movie DMT, the Spirit Molecule, which you were actually in, and in his book, he talked about the pineal gland, and a lot of people, especially New Agers, tend to use the pineal gland as the holy grail, where DMT is made 49 days of conception, before death, you know, during dreams, and all of this gets thrown around quite a lot. And I haven't been able to find a definite answer. Do you know if DMT is made in the pineal gland? Do we know now, or?
Well, yeah, it's surprising how hard it is to nail that information down. Apparently, it is. This has been a question for a while, and you know, we know that all the enzymes to make it are there. All the precursors are there. Serotonin and other tryptamines are in the pineal gland. All the enzymes are there. And for a long time, it was a question whether, well, does it occur in the pineal at all, or when, or you know, and of course the New Age side of it just accepted without question that of course it does. But there is a support for this now. I mean, the DMT has been found in the pineal gland. And so that question is settled. What's not settled is, what is it doing there? You know, if anything, does it actually have a function? And that's, you know, there are different schools of thought about this. That's one of the reasons to go to Breaking Convention, actually, because this is going to be addressed. Dave Nichols, who is his approach is reductionist. He just says it's there, but it never reaches a concentration where anyone could detect it, and it's very quickly broken down in metabolism, which is true. And then E.D. Frexa has kind of taken the opposite tack, that he says, well, it does in fact have functions. There are certain situations where it can be stored in vesicles. Under certain conditions, it can reach a high concentration. And the question is, what governs that? What governs its release? And when it's released, is there enough to actually elicit a strong psychedelic experience, or you know, even a weak one? And so you've got these two guys, both of which I admire greatly, and they're both very good, pharmacologists. So this is going to be discussed at Breaking Convention, which is one of the strong motivations for me to go. I would probably be in on that discussion. I might be the referee. If it breaks out to fist fights, I might be the guy that has to break it up, but probably won't get to that point. But it will be discussed for sure, because this is an important question, really. Why does the body make DMT, and what is it doing with that substance?
Maybe it's the connection between this world and the other world. It's why.
Well, that's what people say.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not surprising that it's in the body in a way, because again, it's in so many things. It's 2 steps away from tryptophan, which is universal in every living thing that we know of, and it's only 2 steps away. So it does occur in thousands of plants, and probably thousands of animals as well. Very much in the reptiles and amphibians, as you know. And it's not an exaggeration to say that nature is, essentially drenched in DMT. It shows up all over the place. But under normal circumstances, if you're gonna, you can be the most widely foraging omnivore that you can imagine. You can be dining on all kinds of DMT containing plants, but until you combine them with an MAO inhibitor, nothing's going to happen. Or you figure out that there's another route of administration, which again people did. People talk a lot about the miracle of ayahuasca. How did people discover among 80,000 species in the Amazon to combine just these 2 to make ayahuasca? How did they discover that? And you get a big spectrum of answers. The indigenous people will say, well, the plants taught us to do this. We learned from the plants. Maybe so. But a Westerner has a hard time with that, and it could be trial and error or whatever. But the fact is, these compounds are not rare in nature. DMT is common in nature. The beta carbolines, a little less, but still not that rare. Many plants contain them. So the idea that by trial and error, lucky accident, you could stumble on this, it's entirely possible that it was just an accident. But I don't think we want to believe that, but that may be true. I mean, what's more, in some ways, more remarkable to me is the fact that, DMT is not orally active, and you need an MAO inhibitor to make it orally active. But long before ayahuasca was on the scene, indigenous people were using these snuffs, the DMT-containing snuffs. Antidanthera, very strong from the leguminous plant. They prepare snuffs out of this. That's a practice that goes back at least 10,000 years, probably much older. And, so what drove these people to think that if they ground up this seed and shoved it up their nose, something interesting would happen? It wouldn't be your first impulse to take a plant powder and shove it up your nose. Did the plants tell them to do that? I don't know. Maybe so. But to me, that's at least as interesting. That is as interesting a question of how they discovered the combination that led to ayahuasca.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I mean, it's just one of those mysteries, I think, that we probably won't ever solve, that how they figured this out. I mean, there's so many different species of plants, like you said. But my final question for you, Dennis, you might want to sit down for this one, because like I did warn you earlier that my audience are quite open-minded.
So I am sitting down, so I
want to take a deep breath and just sit back, maybe.
All right.
This final question comes from David Weiss, who also has a podcast on YouTube under the name of Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. and he asks, do you think the Earth could be flat? There's a lot of discussion. I don't know if you're aware of people discussing the shape of the Earth recently. Um, are you aware of this or not?
No, I thought that was settled like in the 12th century or something.
Yeah,
No.
It's come back in full force.
Explain to me what.
Well, what's happened is this started about 2 years ago. People just began questioning whether, because there were a lot of stuff coming out from NASA that were blatantly faked, and people just started asking questions. And now we're at a point where there are a lot of people who claim the Earth is flat. There's arguments, there's debates. YouTube is full of it. And I thought maybe if you had heard about this at all, what your views are. No?
Well, I'm not sure where that's coming from, because we have pictures of the Earth from space, and
yeah, we have 3 pictures of Earth from space dating back 40 years. Most of them are, I think NASA admits, they're composites. And yeah, I mean, the curvature of the Earth, for example, problems with that. So, you know, there's a lot of questions with everything. I mean, it's just not the shape of the Earth, really. I think like we can agree that we're being lied to on such a big scale that even if we were lied to about the shape of the Earth, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not surprised, I should say. So I don't know. I thought you might have heard about it because it was quite a big topic.
Can't say I have. No, I kind of thought that of all the things in science that we, I mean, that much of scientific discoveries are open to question, and always should be open to question. I kind of thought that the shape of the Earth, we'd kind of settled that question and moved on. Now you're telling me maybe not.
Maybe not. If you haven't heard of it, I would highly recommend you look into it. There's a couple of videos I can send you. It's very interesting. There's some very interesting points that are made. And to me, I mean, my personal belief is we are in some sort of simulation anyway. Regardless of what the shape is, the construct is not real. So I think the bigger picture really doesn't matter. But
well, whether it's a simulation or not is like another conversation.
Yeah,
it seems to be. Is there a place I can check up on this?
Yeah, I will have some amazing videos. I will send you. There's a couple, and then they will take you from there. I mean, I personally myself went in looking into it 2 years ago because I found it so absurd and so ridiculous that someone in the year 2015 could question the shape of the Earth. You know, I was just like, why are these? And it was something that kept coming up on YouTube recommended videos. I would just ignore. One day I clicked just to see what the fuss was about, and I gotta admit, it blew me away. There are some very amazing points being made. Again, I'm not a scientist, so I can't speak on all of them, but you have to, I mean, it's something you have to look into yourself with an open mind, which I know you are a very open-minded person, so I'm sure you won't have difficulty looking into it.
Send me a link. I'd be interested to see it.
Yeah, will do. There's a very big community online actually talking about it. It's been in the mainstream recently as well. There's been a few NBA football players that have come out recently saying that they think the Earth is flat. There's been a few celebrities. It's quite interesting topic. I mean, it's being suppressed in a way. They're trying to keep people down, keep it quiet, but I mean, it's starting to boil. It's very, very interesting to watch. I will send you some links. You can tell me what you think.
Send me some links.
I will do, absolutely.
I mean,
it's good to look into something different once, just to
I mean, like I say, it's good to keep an open mind, but I really had thought that one was kind of settled, but apparently not.
I don't think we can ever settle on anything, to be honest.
Right.
That's what's fun about it, though. I think with the life is just the questions we're asking. That's really the purpose of it, really, just to seek answers, isn't it? Ultimately. But yeah, anyway, Dennis, I won't keep you long. I know you're a busy guy. I just want to thank you so much for being here today. It was amazing talking to you. and maybe we can do it again. If you do come to London for the Breaking Convention, I'll probably see you there. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I may end up going there. It's looking like maybe I have to go there.
Okay, well,
and I've been wanting to for some years, so I might see you there. I hope so.
Right, perfect. Maybe we can talk about the flat Earth when you're down.
Send me some information so I can get up to speed on this.
I will do, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, not I get lots of links and stuff, but
yeah.
This would be worth looking at. So
yeah,
give me the condensed version of this idea.
I will do. Definitely. Again, thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will put all of the links in the description for anyone that wants to go and check out what we discussed today. Again, thank you, Dennis. And I will speak to you.
You're welcome. Let me know when it's up on the web so I can put it on my own site and link people to it. So yes, thank you very much, Amir. I'm sorry about the sound quality, but
no, it was perfect.
Okay, all right.